Welcome. My name is Karen McDonagh, and I work with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Thank you so much, Chase, for the beautiful opening. And as Chase said, he is one of our Tribal Youth Resource Center youth ambassadors. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But I want to thank you very much, and just to say how important the Tribal Youth Resource Center youth ambassadors are to us and to our work. The voices, you'll hear a variety of voices on today's presentation. We have, but the voices that you'll hear the most of are myself, and as I said, I'm a program manager with OJJDP, and Ms. Stephanie Autumn, who's the director of the Tribal Youth Resource Center, Mr. Jacob Metoxen, who works most closely with the Tribal Juvenile Healing and Wellness Courts Training and Technical Assistance, and Ms. Ethleen Ironcloud Two Dogs, who also works with the Tribal Youth Training and Technical Assistance Center. Next slide, please.
It's our heartfelt intention today to provide you foundational information in terms of moving forward, everything you need to know about your grant management of your FY 2022 recent grant award, that you know who to reach out to, that you know who to call, text, instant message, whatever it is you need to know, that when you leave this session today, you'll know the expectations of you as a new grantee, and also the supports that are available to you through the Tribal Youth Resource Center. So, we want to make sure that you are feeling confident and that you know that you're supported not only in the launch of your grant, but through strategic planning, implementation, data collection, and sustainability. We also want to ensure that you are aware of the variety of resources that are at your disposal, not only from the Tribal Youth Resource Center, but from other OJJDP funded TA centers to support you on this journey of your new grant. You'll also receive information about key next steps, next training, and most importantly, the other human beings in the room that you'll be working with, other grantees, and kind of like a celebration of today, of your award and this new journey that you're on. Next slide.
Like Stephanie said, some of the most important folks that you're going to be interfacing with are the other grantees who are on the same journey as you are. And this year, we're really pleased to have been able to make a variety of different awards. Some of you who have known OJJDP and who have had juvenile healing to wellness courts and tribal youth programs in the past may have noticed that some of our awards have changed. And so this year, we were really glad to be able to make 5 awards to juvenile healing to wellness courts. 4 of them are what we call enhancement grantees, which means we already know you, we're already friends, we've already been working together. And this second award is for you to continue on your journey and to enhance the program and to work on sustainability. And then there's 1 new grantee this year. And then for the tribal youth programs, or what some people call Purpose Area 9, we were able to make a number of awards, and they're in 3 different categories, which is a relatively new development for us. So we have 6 of the Seeding Change grantees. Those are 2-year planning grants. And then we have 7 of the Cultivating Change grantees. So those are grantees that are coming in to begin implementing their program. And then 7 of what we're calling Harvesting Change grantees. So those are very much like the enhancement grantees on Purpose Area 8. They are the grantees that we already know. We've already been working with your tribe and with you, or with someone who was in the position before you. And this is an opportunity to continue your work and to continue building sustainability and enhancing and expanding your program. Next slide, please. So we'd love to hear who is here. And we thought that a good way to do it was to have you type into the chat. If you wouldn't mind, please letting us know your name and the tribe you're representing. If you have a professional title that you'd like to share, or your relationship to the funded program. We'd love to just know who's joining us today. And it's great to know where you're coming from as well. We have people from all over the country. Thank you, Joseph. Let's see. Thank you, Tony. Hi, Yolanda. Great. Good to have someone here from Karuk tribe, San Pasqual, Pinoleville, Tunica Biloxi. Great. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know you have lots of things to do, and we really appreciate your time and hope that we're able to provide some information that's going to be really useful to you. Welcome, Glenn. Welcome, Nikki. Welcome, Kaylee. Can we have the next slide, please? So just to give you a little bit of a visual on, where around the country these programs are. For this year, the 4 enhancement grantees that we talked about, Karuk Tribe, Saginaw Chippewa, Tunica Biloxi, and Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians, are the 4 enhancement grants. So that means that you all are really a cohort and can help each other because you're in a similar position. And if we can have the next slide, please. And then here is a map of the Tribal Youth Program grantees. The dots in red are the new planning grant grantees. So the Sharai Heights Indian Community, the Kiowa Tribe of Oklahoma, and the Penobscot Indian Nation. You guys are going to be embarking on this journey together. You'll have the Tribal Youth Resource Center is going to be bringing you together, specifically around what your strategic planning is going to look like. And we'll share more information about this later in the presentation. And then the Cultivating Change grantees are in green, and that is the Bishop Indian Tribal Council, who is new to their tribal youth program, the Karuk Tribe, the Omaha Tribe of Nebraska, the Wallapai Tribal Council, the Nez Perce Tribe, Pinoleville, Pomo Nation, and the Wichita and affiliated tribes. So we're really happy to have all of you. And in blue are the folks who are joining us for a second award for their program. And so these are folks that we likely know already. Welcome back. This is the San Pasqual Band of Mission Indians, the Pueblo of Zia, the Lower Sioux Community Council, Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, and the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. We're really glad to have you back. And we want to make sure that for those of you who are a Seeding Change grantee or a Cultivating Change grantee, we will be having opportunities for you to learn from the experiences of the returning grantees. And we want you to know that our intention is that folks can use this as a way to have more time to build this program. If you come in as a Seeding Change grantee and you're able to do a strategic plan with us, you would have a priority consideration if and when you applied for the Cultivating Change grantees. And that's true for the next phase as well. If you're a Cultivating Change grantee and things have gone well and you're in a good place and want to apply, you're only really applying against the other, not against, but you're only really applying with the other folks in that cohort. You're not in the consideration with other grantees. So again, welcome. Can we get the next slide? So we wanted to take the time to let you know everyone who has one of these grants has a point of contact at the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And we wanted to make sure you knew that we're invested in your success and we want to be a resource for you. And so we are assigned to each, specific program, and we want to make sure that you know who your point of contact is. Miss Lynetta Jesse had a conflict, so she wasn't able to actually be on the call today, but she wanted me to let you know that she's excited to work with you and that she'll be working with the Kiowa tribe and the Red Lake Band of Chippewa Indians. And Miss Christine Ramirez is on our call, but unfortunately she has an issue with her throat. So she asked me to also convey that she's looking forward to working with you and that she will be the point of contact for the Bishop Indian Tribal Council, Grand Traverse Band, Karuk Tribe, the Menominee Tribe, the Omaha Tribe, and the Pueblo of Zia. And I will be working with the tribes that are listed under my name. And I'm also really grateful to get to work with you and to learn from the important work that you're doing in your community. And I'll be working with the Cherokee Heights Indian community, Wallapai, Nez Perce, Penobscot, Penolaville, San Pasqual, and Wichita. Next slide, please. Actually, I'm sorry. Can you go back to the last slide? Heather McDonald and Jerome Avoid are with us, and so I'm going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Hi there, nice to meet you. In this cohort, the community that I'm going to support for Purpose Area 8, Tribal Juvenile Healing to Wellness Quartet, is the native village of Congigineck. They're not on this call because they're actually in Alaska, but I have a portfolio of many of your peers from the previous years of fundings, and I am also a resource in the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So I'm looking forward to participating with this cohort too. Thank you.
Greetings, I am Jerome Avoid. I'm also a senior program manager with OJJDP, and I have been working with tribal grantees now for a couple of years. So I look forward to some of my continued work with some of the grants that I've had previously. And for those that I'll just be beginning working with, I look forward to working with you and being a resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get the next slide? Okay, and I just wanted to alert you that this is on our OJJDP website. So if you're curious about the rest of the tribal grants that we fund, if you want to see the kinds of programs that are being funded, if you want to see if there's programs that are like yours, if you want to see, other years and other cohorts, or if you want to see if there's a program that's not the Tribal Youth Program or the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court Program that tribes are being funded for, if you want to understand who's in your state that may be nearby you in a county that has an award through OJJDP, this is a really good, and it's a relatively new resource. So some of you who started with us, some years ago, some of the enhancement grantees, this probably wasn't in effect when you first came on. But it basically, thank you, Heather. Heather put a link to it directly into the chat. And you can go and you can filter by all kinds of different ways. You can filter, you can actually, if you want to see if your tribe has other tools, other funded projects. You can fund by, the grantee themselves, you can fund by the state, or you can fund by the solicitation. So that's also a chance for you to, you'll see kind of a drop-down menu and see what other funding sources there are. There definitely have been tribes that have been funded for things like a juvenile delinquency prevention project that's not tribal specific, or an opioid affected youth project that's not tribal specific, or a juvenile drug court or a family treatment court. We know for sure that there are tribes that are applying for those other awards and are receiving them. So if that's something that interests you, this is a good resource. And each of them also contains like a project description. So, if you wanted to see who in your cohort might be working on similar issues, we know that we have seen a lot of tribes who are interested in truancy prevention. So there's a number of truancy prevention awards, and one of the things we really want to do, we know that you really value and that we want to do more of, and we want to do it well, is to connect you with your peers who are doing things that are similar to the things that you're doing, to learn from each other and to have a chance to talk about barriers, to talk about innovative strategies. So that's just one tool, but we'll be working to connect you throughout the life of your award. So next slide, please. So the Managing Your Grant Award, we're going to have some slides coming up. We're just taking care of some of the basics of managing your grant award. So Heather's going to speak to you about working with the Just Grants system, which is our system of record for your grant. And then Jerome is going to be speaking with you about key next steps with grant administration, which includes things like accepting your award package, making sure that your budget's cleared so that you can draw down funds to start hiring and start your program. Making sure that you understand how to get access to applications to review. We know that many of you may not have been involved with the grant application. And we know that some of you will be passing along the knowledge that you get today to your new hires. So we're going to go over all that stuff in the next few slides. So next slide, please.
So I know that many of you are familiar with the system because you've been working really hard to try accept the grant award and work on your budget clearance. But if there are people on that are unfamiliar, I wanted to make sure that you knew at least what the opening screen looked like and you knew where to go. This system, Just Grants, is the official system of record of the formal relationship between your sovereign tribal nation and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. It's where all of the actions related to your grant award are documented. So when you need budget adjustments, or when you get your new indirect cost rate, or when there's a personnel change, or when you write performance reports or FFRs, that's all recorded in here. So it's really important that you and your team are familiar with this tool and pay close attention to how roles are assigned. I want to make sure that you know that there are a variety of types of support mechanisms in the system. So there are training manuals, there are videos that demonstrate how to do things, there are little PDF guides to get you through specific processes. And each week there are 3 to 4 open office hours run by live humans from the Just Grants team, where you can come online and actively share a screen to get support. The default mechanism that I often encourage people to use, if none of those tools work for them, is that they do an email to Just Grants support with screenshots identifying the specific concerns or issues. And when they make that email, that they CC their grant management specialist here at OJJDP so that we can follow along. And the reason I ask you to do that is so that we can document what the challenges are from your personal experience or the user experience. This tool has existed for about 2.5 years, and it is still being built. So it's not a perfect tool, it's the tool that we have. And so it is possible that you will find a new or unique bug. It might not just be you having a challenge, but it might actually be a universal challenge. And until it's documented, it's really hard to get that bug fixed. Next slide, please. One of the important steps now that you've got your grant award and you're getting things going or you're hiring new staff is to make sure that you use that entity management training materials to make sure you assign the roles. So some of you that are familiar with our old version of the grants management system, in the old version, all sorts of different users could do all the things required to run a grant, but not in this system. In this system, each role has a unique thing that they can or cannot do. So you have to work really hard in your training and your differentiation of roles at your entity to make sure that you understand what you can and can't do. So this is an example of a matrix that you can access on that entity management training website to see the limitations and opportunities for each specific role. Next slide, please. So this is another example of a visual PDF that describes the roles for each of the types of tasks assigned in Just Grants, or not tasks, but user roles in Just Grants. And on the right is an example of the videos or links that you can click to follow along for some basic one step-by-step practices. Next slide, please.
Okay, I'll share the next few slides with you, talking about acceptance of your award in Just Grants and the process. It's very important that if you haven't already, accept your award, because there are requirements on the time frame of award acceptance. And you have to make sure that the individual listed at in the system as your grant award administrator is the one that accepts the award. There are steps. I do believe Heather put it in the chat. There are steps and videos and things like that that you can watch on how to accept your award. Next slide. So this is where we will tell you that it may take a little bit of time because clearing your budget requires a few steps. So most of our awards are issued with a conditional clearance on there. And mainly that's because our finance office does have so many budgets and grants that they have to approve by the end of the fiscal year. So a conditional budget clearance is most likely on your award. And the finance office has to review it and then issue a final clearance memo before you have access to those funds. With these awards, we do have the that availability, the exception of the $15,000 that was you had access to attend the trainings that we had at the end of in December. So most of you have been, or you should be aware of that. And just want to say that you may get some emails from us back and forth, as well as the OCFO office, so we can get that information to the point of it being acceptable and that they can issue a final clearance. So we will work closely with you, and we will work closely with the OCFO office to make that happen. Next slide. So just to elaborate a little bit, OCFO, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, that is our official finance office. Again, they will issue their changes in the Just Grant system in the form of a GAM, which is a grant adjustment modification. This will be in Just Grants. You will receive a notification when they put information on your award for you to respond to. It is very important that you monitor that you respond in a timely manner so that we can be responsive and getting your budget cleared. And on here, you can see there are very specific instructions on how to make that happen with the job aids. And pages 89 to 95, those screenshots and those directions should be helpful in helping you navigate Just Grants to understand what you need to change in your budget. Next slide. So tip number 3, it is very essential that you decide, if you haven't already, most of you probably have, who is your Just Grants team, who is going to have certain access and rights in Just Grants in order to navigate the system. Also, who's going to be attending the CTAS orientation that is coming up in March. We listed here some staff to include, and we do understand that you may not have your staff or your team fully hired at this point, but just taking note that whoever is going to be doing the information transfer to ensure that they're available to get this valuable information. We also just always recommend that you review all your special conditions, the grant that was submitted in the system, because often we know that you may not have been a person to actually write the grant. So let's make sure everyone on a team familiarizes themselves with what was actually proposed. Next slide. So here are some other tips. The financial management training is a requirement for the grant, and it should be completed 120 days after the acceptance of the award. So just make sure that you are, adhering to this special condition. It doesn't matter if the person is hired or not yet, but make sure that training is completed and your certificate is uploaded in Just Grants. And a copy of all of the training links and everything is on a web link that's embedded here on the slide, as well as Heather put it in the chat. Next slide. All right. Here we are for questions. If there are any immediate questions for us, or if there are any questions already in the chat.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. I'm wondering if folks either want to raise their hand, put it in the chat box. If you think of it later, we will monitor the chat box and can come back to your question.
I wanted to just clarify something, I think, especially for those of you who have who are previous grantees. In the past, what was called the CTAS orientation, which is different from what we do, because what we're doing today is gathering just the folks who have been funded through Purpose Area 8 and 9. But the CTAS orientation is something that gathers everybody that got a CTAS grant. So it could be any of the purpose areas. And in the past, that orientation happens in December, and it's a day of training that's kind of on financial management, on audit findings, and then it's a second day where we do something specific with the Purpose Area 8 and 9. And this year that was a little bit different, because what they did was split up those days so that in December there was one day that was for everybody. Some of you may or may not have gone to it. If you missed it, there is a recording that we can send to you. And then in March, there'll be another gathering of just the Purpose Area 8 and 9. So if that feels different to people that have been with us before, it's because it is different this year. But it looks like we have a question.
Yes, we do, Kara. That's about the reporting.
Good. Okay, and Rachel, thank you for your question. Rachel says, I'm wondering about the quarterly performance reporting. And that's a great question. There are no question sets available yet for my award. I was told yesterday in a training I'm reporting that I would be contacted about it. Oh, and Leah is saying I have the same issue. That's great. So it sounds like you all are aware that the first quarterly, it's not quarterly, actually, they're semi-annual. So they happen twice a year. And the first one is at the end of January. And for you all, it's you report directly into Just Grants. And if there is not a question set yet available, that you are going to have to, be contacted about them. It's great that you were that you went to the training yesterday, and that you already asked about this. My recommendation would be that you also send something to your program manager to, since we're meeting each other now, just to put it in an email to say, this is an issue that I've had. I went to the training. I said I'd be contacted about it. And so that we can also help question, that, and be sure that you get the question set so that you're able to complete it. There is also a place where you can see, I don't know if you can see the questions that you will be asked, but we can also put a link in here so that you'll see what the questions are once it is uploaded to your Just Grants performance report. So this is one of the things, it's a perfect example of something that Heather was saying earlier, that this is a system that's still kind of a work in progress.
So Carol, wondering if they could be referencing the financial reports.
Oh, maybe Rachel or Leah. I don't think the financial reports have a question set, but if that is true,
I was just speaking to the time that I think it's the quarterly versus semi-annual.
Right, it's correct that the financial reports are quarterly. So if the issue that you're having is your financial reports, maybe you can clarify that in our chat. But either way, I would recommend that you be in touch with your program manager about that so that you can get us on board to help straighten it out. And okay, Leah is saying, I have 2 sets of questions. Okay, great. I have 2 sets of questions, but they're not for October to December of 22. Okay, well, that makes sense. And they should be in there. You should have the questions from October 1, 22 to December 30th, 22. So that's an issue with the system for sure. And Erica is asking us to go back to the previous slide about the financial management training. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm not sure exactly your question on this slide, Erica.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, was this specific question.
If you could type it in the chat, that would be great. Oh, I'm sorry, that was Yolanda who had that question.
Okay. Oh, and I think she said she was writing down the information. We did say we will be sharing the slides, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
We will share it. And we can share a recording of this so that you can share it with whoever else you need to share it with.
Did the CTAS orientation count towards this training? Are we talking about the financial management training or?
That is a question that comes up. That I've heard that question before, because the CTAS orientation includes a session on financial management.
Oh, yeah, but the training is different. It's very specific. You will actually receive a certificate after completion. And let me just also make another note that the training is a time consuming. There are a lot of modules, so you can do the online training and break it up, over a few days, which I do believe is the recommendation from a number of grantees. So pace yourself, because apparently there are a lot of modules. So if you did the CTAS orientation and there was a workshop on financial management, or I don't know, from our finance department, that's not the same as the financial management training. You definitely need a certificate of completion of the one of that training.
Great.
There's another question that just popped up from Mandy regarding submitting a GAM.
Okay, great. So it sounds like people are already in the system and trying to function in there, so that's great news. And Mandy, if you are not getting an option to submit a GAM, it might be because of the thing that Heather covered earlier about roles. So that's always the first place where I check is, do I have a role, in order to submit the GAM? But
Hey, this is Heather. Another reason is it might be that you haven't yet finished budget clearance. So you can't create an amendment because you haven't yet completed the process of fully authorizing the award. So if you already know you need adjustments, you should use the budget clearance process to make those adjustments. But if it's going to be a significant change, you should maybe have a conversation with your grants management specialist to figure out if the best way is to wait for that budget clearance to finish and then create a new GAM, or if you should do it simultaneously, because it's different for every entity.
so Mandy, I know I'm your point of contact. And so if neither of those things is true, if you do have a budget clearance and you do have the correct role in Just Grants and you're still not getting anything, then it most definitely could be a glitch. And we're going to recommend that same thing, taking a screenshot of it, sending it to the Just Grants help desk and CCing me so that I can assist with follow-up.
And Kara, a question that often comes up from grantees that have had a previous OJJDP, TY, or Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court grant is if they've done the financial training for a previous grant, are they required to take the training again for this new grant?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So if you have taken the training and gotten a certificate anytime on or after October 15th, 2020, then this condition's already satisfied. You don't need to do it again. So essentially this training is good for 3 years.
Thank you, Kara.
Okay.
Are there any other questions before we move on? And
Again, as a best practice, when you have your certificate and it fits within the time period, it's a good idea for you to upload it as an award deliverable on this new grant. You can, when you mark it as an award deliverable, you mark it to satisfy an award condition. So then it directly links on this grant to satisfy that award condition. So you would be attaching 2 certificates to this grant. One certificate for the grant awards administrator and one for the financial manager or managers for this award. So if you want to be really tidy administratively, that is a very helpful tool.
Thank you, Heather. Antonia, could you advance us to our slide, the next one, please?
Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you're at. So there's a question about what is training and technical assistance, and the Tribal Youth Resource Center is charged with providing those activities, the training, and what are they? They're designed to achieve specific learning objectives, resolve problems, deal with just any kind of questions or training that you might have about application of your program goal. We have a tribal youth program website. You are welcome to look at that website and request training and technical assistance through your assigned technical assistance specialist, and or you can request it on that website. So that's what we do. Thank you.
I think we can go to the next slide, Tony. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Metoxen. I'm a Oneida from Wisconsin and serve the TYRC as the Training and Technical Assistance Manager for the Juvenile Healing and Wellness Court grantees. So we're going to look briefly at what the TYRC and TLPI TA efforts look like, as Ethleen had mentioned. And just to outline that the TYRC is an organization under the TLPI umbrella, and we serve PA8 and PA9 grantees in the lower 48 states. And all of our tribal communities are federally recognized. And we've also got a subcontract with NNCTC, the National Native Children's Trauma Center, based in Montana. We work with them extensively during our training with grantees, and we always get excellent feedback on these sessions, which focus on trauma-informed care and healing-informed care, which are critical components to our tribal youth program and juvenile healing and wellness court grants. And last but not least, just to highlight, our staff works remotely across the United States. And this model was actually in place prior to our now normal transition, I guess. Our grantees are used to it by now, the Zoom life. And it's really an advantage for us as a TA provider because our team consists of various individuals from different communities and different professional experiences. A lot of us are tribal members and have experience working within tribal communities professionally, personally, and this allows for a more tailored approach to our TA that we provide, and creates a network that our grantees can depend on regardless of any issues that they face. You know, our network of staff and consultants really provide a diversity to address any issues or come up with creative approaches to any obstacles that your community faces and trying to implement your grants. So that's really been an advantage for our team as well as our grantee and our OJJDP partners. And you're going to hear this consistently, hopefully today and going forward. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. You know, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you. We're here to hopefully make your jobs a little bit easier and work with OJJDP, our partners, in helping you all successfully plan and implement your grants. We've been able to develop these relationships over time and really, you know, work with Kara, Jeroma, Heather, Christine, and talk with them consistently and hopefully overcome any obstacles that you guys have and, you know, help your programs become successful.
Yep. And if I could add, Jacob, just want to plant the seed. Many of you already know this already, that every grantee has an OJJDP grant management specialist, and every grantee is assigned a training and technical assistance specialist who you probably already met via email, via phone. You're seeing some of our faces. And most importantly, we're just like you, the Tribal Youth Resource Centers. We're operating under a cooperative agreement that is housed at the Tribal Law and Policy Institute that has been working across Indian country for over 25 years, and would really like to encourage all the new grantees to go to the Tribal Law and Policy Institute website. And because not only do you have the resources of the Tribal Youth Resource Center, you also have available to you the resources and from the different programs that exist, the TA programs that exist at the Tribal Law and Policy Institute.
We can go to the next slide. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Smith. I serve as a program coordinator for the Tribal Youth Resource Center. I know we've been talking a little bit about the Tribal Youth Resource Center website. Heather, thank you for sharing it in the chat. And just wanted to encourage anyone who hasn't been there yet, to check it out whenever you have a few minutes. There are a lot of different resources on there. We have a resource library that contains a variety of resources on different topics. We also have our TYRC podcast, our blog, and a lot of other things on there. And all of the session materials and conference resources from the 2022 OJJDP Tribal Youth National Conference that we held in December. Those resources will all also be available on the website sometime within the next week. So we can go to the next slide, Antonia. Everyone had the opportunity to meet Chase, who gave our beautiful opening today. And we wanted to share just a little bit about our Tribal Youth Resource Center Youth Ambassador Initiative. We're very grateful to have right now 7 brilliant young leaders from across Indian country serving as Tribal Youth Resource Center Youth Ambassadors. Caitlin Martinez, Colby White Thunder, Chase Duncan, James John II, Isabella Friday, Sam Schimmel, who you'll be meeting in a little bit. He'll be giving our closing today, and Sydney Matheson. They're involved at a core level across the work that we do as the TYRC, and you'll all be having the opportunity to see them, get to know them over the coming year. They frequently join our events. They contribute planning and lead sessions on areas that they're passionate about and are involved in a variety of capacities. So their presence and voices at the conference in December were really powerful and a really strong point of the conference for a lot of us who attended. And so just wanted to share briefly about them and plant the seed that you'll be all getting to know them over your grant periods. You can go to the next slide, Antonia.
And here you see, we have 2 slides with every human being, every person that contributes to the Tribal Youth Resource Center. We will not be going through introductions today, but many of you have already met your assigned training and technical assistance specialist, and you'll be meeting the admin staff as we move forward through our strategic planning process and some of the set-aside OLAs that we'll be having for the new grantees. So next slide, please. Again, what you're seeing in front of you today is not only pictures of the TA team, but also members of our partner at the Tribal Youth Resource Center, whom we could not do this work without. You'll see representatives from the National Native Children's Trauma Center, and you'll be also be able to take advantage of the training and technical assistance that they have to offer. And you'll learn more about that shortly. Next slide.
And speaking of our TTA model, our training and technical assistance model, so as we mentioned before, our TTA model is based around our commitment to working diligently with our Purpose Area 8 and 9 grantees, our staff network, which you just saw, and we'll get to know over time, understands that each grantee has its own history, government, community, court programs, culture. Each community is unique. And with that in mind, we work to ensure grantees, you all feel comfortable with your approach incorporating culture to your youth program, as well as your juvenile healing and wellness courts. And one of our goals is to help grantees develop outside the box ideas of being creative and your program implementation, as well as your juvenile healing and wellness court development, and encourage that those operations incorporate the community needs as well as your resources. And of course, these efforts are all a result of trying to reverse the disproportional contact Native youth have within the justice system. And you know, personally, in the instance of juvenile healing and wellness courts, our efforts are geared around reducing recidivism rates and hoping that individuals who go through the juvenile healing and wellness court do not have any further contact with the justice system going into adulthood. So that's the core principle of a lot of our programming efforts, as well as the Juvenile Healing Wellness Court planning process. And as Stephanie mentioned, to do this, each of you all the 22 grantees are designated a TTA specialist who will provide ongoing assistance virtually, telephonically, via email, as well as on-site visits at times and in gatherings like conferences. And we're always looking forward to those in-person sessions where we're able to meet each other, introduce ourselves, and get to know one another, because I think that really helps develop the relationships going forward and create stronger programming for your respective communities. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, obviously working with our OJJDP grant management specialists to ensure that you all are meeting your reporting requirements. So, feel free, as I stated, to reach out to either them or us, and we'll hopefully get the answers to the questions that you guys have. We can go to the next slide.
Hi again. So within that model is our specific delivery activities. One of them is communication. So you'll get phone calls from us. You'll get requests for, like, say, monthly meetings. According to your availability, we send out e-communications, like a newsletter. We have a blog on our website. We do podcasts. So the communication is, we try to be really consistent with that. And we understand that you're really busy, and we really try to be respectful of your schedule. We also do planning. The planning activities can include looking at strengths, looking at needs, assessing those strengths and needs to be aligned with your program goals. We really look at how we can be helpful and useful in terms of your strategic plan development, along with your advisory committee. Whatever we can do to enhance your program, that is our role. That's why we're here. We also do cohort training. We do training events. We can do on-site training, again, depending on travel restrictions. We can do virtual events, training events. We do talking circles, communities of practice, like, say, something that maybe there's a truancy program or truancy effort. So what are the practice principles and models, for example, in that particular area? We also do national, regional, and again, local events. So that's all of these things will be announced to you. So you don't have to remember, well, this is what they do, because you will have access to these slides. We do online learning events. And again, these will be announced to you. They can be grantee specific, or they can be open to your grantee community or the community in general. So that's what we do. Thank you. Next slide.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. This is Marilyn Zimmerman, and I'm with the National Native Children's Trauma Center. And if you can't tell, I have a cold, so I'm not going to come on. My other colleague is returning from Alaska, providing TTA there. Just want to talk a little bit about our center. We're part of the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and we have been funded since 2007 by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration to provide training and technical assistance to tribes that serve and the systems that serve children in their communities. So somewhere in the country, we're working with a school system or a child welfare system or a public health system or a primary care or a juvenile justice. Our partnership with the Tribal Law and Policy Institute to create the TYRC is to really focus on courts and tribal youth programs. And many of the Purpose Area 9 tribal youth programs are after school or school-based projects. And so it really is in our wheelhouse. Really talking about some of the things that we have specific to juvenile justice is we have a think trauma training that we provide, which is a 3-day training for folks that work with children and adolescents and their families who have experienced traumatic events in their life. Basically sort of the origins of trauma, the impacts of trauma on development, physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. And then, being able to identify the behaviors that might be a result of a person, adolescent's exposure to traumatic events, and really understanding the purpose of those behaviors so that we can respond in a way that's therapeutic and helpful and supportive, rather than trying to be punitive and punishing adolescents for behaviors that they may have used in their lifetime to survive, and aren't helpful now for them, and often are result in a negative contact with law enforcement, and that's how they get into our courts and into our justice systems. And we have adapted several of our products to be specific to American Indian tribes. And we are very excited to be a part of this partnership and look forward to this new cohort and getting to know you all. And I again apologize for my cold. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Marilyn, for that information. And we're going to take about a 5-minute pause now to offer the new grantees and anyone else who may have a question for our training and technical assistance team. We already had one in a chat. Leah asked who was going to be assigned to their program. And if you are one of the folks that initially was named as a point of contact, you would have gotten that information. And if you are an added member or the new point of contact, we want to ensure that you will be on our distribution list and that the assigned training and technical assistance specialist and consultant will be in touch with you to move on to the next steps. So with that, if anyone else wants to pose a question, feel free to use the chat and or unmute yourself. I believe in the reactions mode, you can raise your hand and we'll have someone identify who is asking or who's raising their hand, and we'll call on you. So with that, questions? Well, not seeing any, I want to wish to applaud the TA team facilitators who outlined the framework, the events, the ambassadors, the way in which we approach the work for a job well done, since we don't have questions. So I'm gonna move it up. Oh, go ahead.
I was just thinking that, one of the questions that I sometimes get is, what is the difference between the TA folks and the OJJDP program managers? And so I thought, I would just take the time to answer that, because that, at some point that will sometimes come up. And I just wanted to say that your OJJDP points of contact, who you heard from earlier in the presentation, are employees of the Department of Justice, and we are kind of officially your points of contact for things that have to do with like your budget and your accepting your grant award or modifying your grant or your progress reports, or some of you will receive site visits from us. And the TA folks are, as Stephanie shared, are also grantees of the Department of Justice. And so the relationship they have with you is very different. They're not employees of the federal government. They are there really to be a resource to you, to walk alongside you. They're people that you can talk to about, whatever is going on inside your program, to help really with any barriers, with any challenges. And as Jacob shared, often we work together. We'll get all of us on the phone. Sometimes it's a program issue that also requires kind of an interface with your OJJDP program managers. But I thought that might be like a good point of clarification. So I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
No, I think that was an excellent point. And and opportunity for the distinction between the two. And I really appreciate that. And I always have conversations with community members too that often aren't sure what that relationship is. And so that's a really wonderful point to make. Thank you. So anyone have a question for any of the TA providers and or OJJDP? Okay, otherwise, then I'm going to turn it back to Kara to talk about the OJDP learning events.
Okay, so we just wanted to bring to your attention a few things. As someone pointed out, the next kind of key event that is going to happen is your progress report, which is due, and Heather kindly put in a variety of links there. And then the next one after that is March 14th, which is virtual. And that is our grantee or a CTAS grantee orientation. It'll be the same folks that you are meeting on today's call, and we'll be just going over some additional information. And then the next stage for all of the programs is strategic planning. And that looks different. I think we talked about that a little bit throughout the presentation. The Juvenile Healing to Wellness Courts strategic planning is slightly different than the Tribal Youth Program. The category 1, 2, and 3 strategic planning is different depending on your needs and the development of your program. But essentially that process is going to be happening from February through September of this year. And the Tribal Youth Resource Center will be in touch with grantees, really to talk to you about gathering a team to be involved in these efforts. And for the enhancement grantees to talk to you about your particular needs. And then, as we covered before, the financial management training does have a deadline of 120 days after the acceptance of your award. I will just say as a caveat there, if you have a new programmatic point of contact, let's say that right now you're serving as what's called the grant award administrator, but you're hiring someone new. Once that person gets changed in Just Grants, let's say you have them on, let's say you're lucky, you're able to clear your budget, you'll work really closely with your OJJDP person, that budget gets cleared, you're able to find some wonderful candidates, and you have them on in mid-February. You would put them into the Just Grant system. They would show up as registering as the grant award administrator on February 15th. And the 120 days would start from then for that person. So essentially, the grant award administrator and the financial point of contact do have to do that training. And the 120 days is the sort of deadline for that. So next slide, please. This is just some additional details. There's a link here. This goes out from a different email address than the one that you would have used for today. So you're going to be looking for this link from the NCJTC, and you'll register for it. And the date is March 14th. And we'll send out a reminder as well. Next slide.
And then in terms of our 22 Healing to Wellness Court strategic planning year, I think we're grateful to have 4 lower 48 grantees who are all enhancement. And our goal is to basically ensure that our strategic planning efforts are tailored to meet this reality that you guys are, in your second round of funding, and what that looks like in terms of, the difference between the first round and now in the year 2023. And we see this new era of funding as an opportunity to support enhancement goals and objectives. And, with our grantees hearing about the government and court limitations dating back to 2020, we're looking at this strategic planning as an opportunity to evaluate how your community needs have changed from then to now, and then, you know, what your needs look like now. And one way we've done this is by creating a strategic planning template specifically for enhancement grantees for our 4 communities, and we'll provide that for you in the near future. And the considerations in the strat pack, as I'm sure you all are familiar with, reflect some things to consider as your landscape has changed and you anticipate what the priorities will be in the future in the lifetime of the grant. And in addition, we're in the process of planning our 23 online learning event series and our annual wellness enhancement training. And these topics are focused on common issues that we're hearing from enhancement grantees, from new grantees, and then ways to address them. And then also provide opportunities for you all to get together with us, with OJJDP, staff members, and have discussions about some obstacles or issues that you're having, and also successes. We like to highlight successes and hopes to inspire other grants and bounce ideas around, because some of our ideas that we come up with are creative and are applicable or could be useful in other communities as well. So that's one of our goals. And then we're really looking forward to that in-person component, as I mentioned before, for our strategic planning and getting to know you all, as well as your community. And it gives us a better idea overall of the ways that we can serve you in our capacity as TA providers. And my colleague, Nan Benali, is going to jump on here and address the last 2 bullet points. So thank you all. It was nice meeting you.
I'll talk about the Wellness Court virtual talking circles. In that light, we're trying to encourage more collaboration amongst you as a cohort. And so these talking circles will give us an opportunity, or give you an opportunity, where as grantees, you're able to ask questions or to share progress with one another in your respective communities. And so we'll be setting up those virtual talking circles as part of your training as well. And also training opportunities from the National Native Children's Trauma Center. Marilyn had outlined what some of the things that they do, and they are a great resource for us. And then going forward for this year, one of the things that we're focusing on is some of the traumatic stressors for youth participants, and look at ways that the Juvenile Healing to Wellness Court teams can address these obstacles together and to promote cohesiveness and avoid some of the staff turnover that we're all experiencing. And so those are some of the main things that we're wanting to also highlight. Thank you. Next slide.
And now to learn a little bit about the strategic planning process for the tribal youth grantees. But before we begin, just want to share with you that I think for the last 12 years, a lot of thought has gone into the supports that new grantees need and time in terms of really being able to plan out their grants. Like Jacob mentioned, you know, someone that isn't managing the grant could have written the grant. And one thing that OJDDP and the TA centers assign to providing supports learned is that there really does need to be at least a year planning process to really think out what you need in order to accomplish your goals and objectives, to be able to identify gaps that you didn't know when you submitted the grant, to be able to engage your community, to be able to bring youth voice in, your elder voice in, community voice in. So that's, you know, one of the beauties of strategic planning is just being able to take a breath. Back in the days, grantees used to get funded and they would hit the ground running, and we would see a lot of challenges presented to them. And this year, under the tribal youth programs, we have 3 different groups or cohorts of tribal grantees, as Kara shared with you. And your strategic planning process is going to look different. So for category 1, the seating change, you'll be working with your training and technical assistant individually. And we are planning to be able to come on site at least twice with you during the strategic planning process, and you'll be working remotely with your TA. And also the beauty of this TA model is that your assigned TA will bring in other TA specialists and other experts who will work with you in terms of developing your strategic plan, not only for OJJDP with your seeding grants, but being able to look at a variety of other venues that this strategic plan can serve you with partnerships, with other funding resources, or to really be able to bring in other youth-serving agencies that could support you in your vision of seeding a new program for tribal youth in your community. And as mentioned before, we don't do this in a silo. We utilize our partner, the National Native Children's Trauma Center. So even though you're in a strategic planning phase in developing a program services for your tribal youth under Seeding Change, you can receive training from the National Native Children's Trauma Center or any other consultants that we work with to really help you build your capacity for when you move to the next phase of developing your strategic plan into a full-bodied grant. Mashke, Ethleen, would you like to share in terms of our category 2, the new Tribal Youth Program grantees?
Yes, thank you, Mashke Steph. I think a lot of the activities that are afforded this group of grantees are also afforded, the planning grantees. However, the program grantees might already have like a strategic plan, or they might be on their way to, developing one. And so our role is to provide that support to finalize or to enhance it. We can do on-site visits. We will do peer learning labs with the 2022 new Tribal Youth Program grantees. And there's also wonderful opportunities from the National Native Children's Trauma Center and other TA partners. So there's a wealth of resources and information. Did you want me to go into the enhancement?
I can, Mashke, and I just wanted to add with the what we're calling category 2, cultivating change, is that your TA will be kind of a hybrid or a mix of coming together with other with enhancement grantees, coming together as one cohort, and also on-site visits by your assigned TA and other members of the TA team. Our third category of tribal youth grantees that were funded this year is the enhancement grantees. And I think probably in the beginning when this group was categorized by OJJDP, there was a thought that there wouldn't be much of a need for strategic planning. But what we've learned last year is that so much changes in our community with staffing, with need, with other programs that might have come from other federal or state resources, they may not be there any longer. So what we learned last year is that each grantee, each enhancement grantee is different, and your TA will work with you to develop what you'll be bringing in from your last grant that was funded by OJJDP and what you're enhancing, and kind of rebuild your strategic plan to really reflect the life of your community today, not like 13 months ago when your enhancement grant was possibly written. And I just wanted to share that with the tribal youth grantees, we too have a specific tool, and want to give a shout out to Mashke Ethleen, who led the development and design of that tool. We call it Mapping Your Journey, and it will look differently. That tool looks differently for our Seeding Change, our planning grantees, our new tribal youth programs, and our enhancement grantees. And you'll be learning more about that, because it's our goal is we'll give you a couple of days break, and then your TA, your assigned TA will be reaching out to you and just kind of walk you through the strategic planning process. We'll be sharing the Mapping Your Journey tool. Just really want to get you comfortable with the strategic planning process. I know oftentimes that when we mention the word strategic planning, we like freeze in our place. But one thing that I always remember is that for all of us that are Native, we wouldn't be here today if our ancestors didn't like walk with strategic planning. Because of them, we are still here. And so when I think about strategic planning for tribal youth programs, part of the reason that we do this is we want to ensure that there will always be resources and services and supports for the young people in your community. So strategic planning through an Indigenous lens, I think is like, it lifts you up, it inspires you, it really helps you to think in a different way in terms of how we can take what you wrote and how we can really expand on it to serve not only the youth, but how we better partner with the other individuals in your community that are working with tribal youth. Mashke, anything you'd like to add before we move on?
I'd just like to add that this process really informs readiness, also a readiness to implement, to plan, or to continue, your current efforts. I think that's something that whenever I was a program director, then that was overlooked many years ago. And what we had to do in we were developing a cultural mental health program on our reservation, which is in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And whenever we said, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to have this plan, and we're going to go forward, what we didn't realize was that we needed training ourselves in our own culture. And so we had to take a step back to look at our readiness to do what we wanted to do, and then to address the areas that we needed to address before we went into actual strategic planning. So some of you might have that experience and some of you might not, but I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mashke. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we're getting almost to the end of the presentation. I'm just going to go over a few key next steps, and then our survey will come up on the screen. It's a Zoom survey, so we really value your input, and we ask that you fill out that. It's just a few questions, and then we're going to have a nice closing. So for the next steps, again, I think this is probably done for the majority of people, but just to be sure that your tribe has accepted the award package and Just Grants. And then please work closely with us to clear your budget with your OJJDP points of contact. If you haven't heard anything, please reach out to us. As just as a reminder, the grant award administrator will get something in their work list directly from our finance people that will ask for changes. So sometimes we don't know if it's in there or not. So if you're not seeing anything, if you haven't had any contact from a financial person and you're wondering what's the status of your budget, please reach out. And then if you haven't already, please register for the second part of the CTAS orientation. There is an invite with the registration link. And then please complete the required online financial management training. I will say that I've gotten several questions about the online financial management training. Sometimes there's a glitch with, I think you have to put in a particular number in order for your grant to come up. And so if you have any problem with it whatsoever, please clue us in. There are help desks. You may have already realized that because we're dealing with so many different grantees and so many organizations and entities, our systems are huge, and we have a number of systems. So we have, the Just Grants system. We have a system for the financial management online training. And so, sometimes it can be a little daunting to, kind of keep track of your passwords and see which system, you're interfacing with for which task. I think we've tried to do a good job. For those of you who have had grants with us before, there's now only one system for your progress report. That used to be two. So I think overall we're moving towards a more kind of unified system. But if you have any trouble, please use the different help desks that are available, but also keep your program manager informed because we can assist. So those are all really the only next steps that we have for you. I think we maybe have just a few minutes. So I'm going to just say if there's a veteran kind of grantee that has been through this process before, if there's anyone that has any kind of advice for people that are just starting, we'd love if you, typed it into the chat box for them. If there's anything that we didn't cover that you think, well, I wish I would have known this when I first started, please go ahead and type it into the chat box. The folks who are just starting, I'm sure, would be glad for any guidance you might have as a grantee. And then in just a few minutes, our survey will populate. And thank you so much for your time. And we know that your time is really valuable, and we really appreciate you gathering here with us. And we look forward to the next time that we get together. And we look forward to walking with you through this journey.